My name is Wright. I am the voice of reason. I speak for the Last Crusade.
We who are called by the Last Crusade have been called conservatives by others, or been called right-wing, or been called worse names than this. None of these names are clear. And yet it is clear what we do and do not favor. We do not favor unbridled capitalism, for that leads to a globalist ideology, which is socialism under another name. We do not favor an unbridled libertarianism, for that leads to gender ideology, which is sexual perversion under another name. We do not favor unbridled egalitarianism, for that ushers in critical race theory, which is race hatred under another name. We do not favor unbridled regulation, unchecked censorship, lawless riots, or lawless witch hunts. Police work that winks at corruption in high places and at murder in the gutter is as unwelcome as arsonists being called peaceful protesters, while peaceful protesters are political prisoners. All these things summon, welcome, and excuse creeping totalitarianism. We do not favor the exile of the church from public life, for that leads to atheism, nor do we favor the establishment of the national church or a uniform ideology serving in its place, for these are the old world evils our fathers fled to the new world to escape. We favor Western civilization, which is built on legal, social, and moral order that keeps the various opposing tensions in order: the church and state, equality and liberty, law and custom, public and private, economics and politics. We favor social order where each element is kept in proper balance against the other, each acting to check the excesses of the other, neither too hot nor too cold, but just right. We prefer Goldilocks, as it were, to Big Brother. But who are we? Our ideals are neither old nor new, but eternal. To call us right is misleading, lest we be confused with plutocrats or libertarians who are directly opposed to us. To call us conservative is at best misleading, lest our ideals be consigned to things past. To call us capitalism is very misleading, since we welcome the services of the free market, but we do not welcome its domination or despotism. We are men not of any ideology, we are men of character. Our principles are eternal, based on the eternal Father who grants rights to all men at creation, and who blessed this nation, which was founded so that men would have the freedom to worship Him. We are eternal because our principles originate not in any nostalgia for any idyllic past, nor in a false hope for a utopian future. We are not men of reason as opposed to faith, nor men of faith as opposed to reason. These two things are branches of one truth, and they are not at war. We are men of both. We are men of heart and soul, of mind and sense. We are the men of mankind. We include all who hold faith with the majesty of truth, the impartiality of reason, the objectivity of reality, the authority of virtue, the verity of beauty, the dignity of man, the equality of the law, the love of patriots, and we hold faith with Christ. We are Christians. Christianity is the sole worldview and way of life fitted to allow men to live on earth, for without truth, reason, honesty, for without virtue, beauty, dignity, for without justice, love, and faith, men do not prosper, and in the long run, men cannot live. Hate is the soul and the weapon of Big Brother. Hatred of all mankind lurks behind each lesser hate Big Brother promotes. We are the countervailing force and the cure for this. We hold that each man should love his life and kin and country, but also love his world. We are the patriots of our local parish, region, and nations, but we are also the patriots of mankind. We seek the good for all the globe, but we begin, as all love must begin, at home. Nonetheless, love for one's kin and neighbor is not our final love. It is not where we end. It is true that in these dark days we tarry amidst the many woes and tumults of mortal lands, but it is also true that this is a pilgrim world, so our highest loyalty cannot rest here. We are patriots of an eternal kingdom. We are patriots of eternity. As patriots of eternity, our principles are neither young nor old. Ours are principles that do not fade nor change with time, but which are true for all men and everywhere. Eternal principles have the advantage that, being eternal, they are always an option. Our principles are unchanged from generation to generation, like the principles of mathematics, or geometry, or justice. They are present in all ages, but they do not age. A patriot of the eternal in political matters upholds democracy over mob rule, constitutional monarchy over tyranny, and republicanism over oligarchy. In all forms of government, a patriot favors lawful limits. No man who loves his country wants his rulers to be unruled or his lawgivers to be lawless. Caesar is never being called a god by a true patriot. A true patriot will support the right of man to bear arms, to speak his mind, to publish and read as he would, and to remove leaders lacking popular support from any popular office by popular vote. In American politics, we specifically uphold the ideals of the Declaration of Independence and the practices of the U.S. Constitution. But for societies less advanced and civilized than our own, we still support the ideal of defending the natural rights of man, even if the forms and practices differ. A patriot of the eternal in economic matters upholds the right of man to enjoy the fruits of his own labor, to own his own land, and to trade with whom he would on what terms as both shall mutually agree, without fear of force or fraud. No man who loves his country wants his leaders to be bribed and bought by merchants, or wants his merchants to be blackmailed and looted by his leaders. A patriot of the eternal in social matters upholds public decency, monogamy, chastity, and compliance with Christian moral teaching. The more strict among us also comply with the ancient teaching forbidding divorce and contraception. No man who loves his country wants his society to be the cesspit and freak show of sexual perversion, since, as the family dissolves, trust erodes, and as trust erodes, law and order evaporate. We acknowledge the right of man to worship God freely, without interference from the magistrate, since faith compelled is a mockery of faith. No man who loves his country wants Sharia law, where worship is compulsory, or Soviet law, where worship is thought crime. Such is the stance of all true patriots of all generations of Christendom. We are not represented by the Republican Party in America. Indeed, we are often opposed to that party, mocked, denounced, and reviled. The Republican Party in America, as it stands in the modern day, is hardly friendly to any of these principles. It is a mix of dwindling and corrupt old pragmatists who have sold their souls to the leftist establishment, together with a new generation of young ideologues who are half free marketeers, caring nothing about social conservatism, and half social conservatives, caring nothing about free market economics. The result is that the mainstream Republican Party in America opposes the party of treason on some points, but aids and abets that treason in others. We, who are eternal patriots, are best understood as those who oppose the traitors on all points, not just some. For the enemies are not just traitors to one tribe, one nation, or one language. They are traitors to all mankind. The enemies are not just traitors to one generation or age. They betray both past and future. They break faith with our forefathers and our progeny alike by squandering and dissipating priceless legacies, both material and spiritual, real and cultural. Americans inherited a land of liberty which our children will not see. Our crusade is to preserve all the ideals of Western civilization, not just the marketplace, not just monogamy, but all the institutions needed for civilized life on Earth. So who are these traitors? Who is the eternal enemy? The enemy should not be called progressives, since the only progress they make is toward mass misery and mass graves, which follow wherever they find a foothold. A better name would be to call them Morlocks, for they regard themselves as the end product of superhuman evolution, superior in mind and soul to mortal man, but in fact they are cannibals in every way but literal, or so I hope. Their ideology is represented by the Democrat Party in America, by the elitist establishment in Europe, and by the various forms of socialism, communism, and thuggery elsewhere around the world. They are all who say truth is relative, reason is partial, reality is personal, being judgmental is wrong, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and bistro dignity, while man is not. In the name of collectivism, they uphold socialism in economics, totalitarianism in politics, and secularism in all things. Theirs is not a political movement. They are ideologues. An ideologue is a faithful follower of any one of several fake and secular substitutes for faith, born during the benighted age called the Enlightenment, when men began to turn away from Christ in droves. An ideology is a fake religion, because it worships the state as the source of salvation. Like pagans of old, the ideologue worships Caesar as a god. Ideologues are also infected with terminal narcissism, since whenever a Caesar worshipper looks with adoration upon the face of his god, he sees his own image. Narcissism is the reason ideology is not just a false religion, it is also a mental disorder. Ideology holds that original sin does not come from human nature, but from unevolved social institutions, such as monogamy or private property or the laws of grammar. Ideologies hold that man is saved not through the blood shed by Christ, but through the shedding of human blood in whatever unimaginable magnitudes as may prove necessary to eliminate these corrupting institutions, such as monogamy or private property or proper grammar. I kid you not. These madmen talk as if changing the rules of pronoun use in speech and thought will magically eliminate hatred from the human heart and usher in utopia. For details of how the ideology of Caesar worship destroys everything good in life, please consult the history of the 20th century, or examine the laws and policies of Nazi Germany, Soviet Russia, Red China. You have been told by many voices that the progress of progressivism is inevitable, that the clock cannot be turned back, the toothpaste is never squeezed back into the tube. This is like being told that when winter comes, spring will never come again. More to the point, it is like being told that the Son of Man, once dead and buried, will never rise again. Even its own practitioners know that following an ideology is following a fake religion, where no forgiveness, no sense, and no salvation can be found. Even its own practitioners know their fake religion saves nothing, improves nothing, and creates nothing. After a century and counting, they have not one success of which to boast. No slave was ever freed by them, no sick child ever cured, no downtrodden woman ever ennobled, no ignorant man ever enlightened, no poor man made wealthy, no underprivileged underling or second-class citizen ever freed from the fetters of a one-sided law. And yet Christian nations have done all these things, and so thoroughly, and so well, and so completely, that the only instances of systemic race hatred, misogyny, or class privilege to be found in the headlines of a modern newspaper are wild fictions with no basis in fact. And yet, despite all the failures, ideology sits astride the world like Colossus. Who is like unto the beast? Who can oppose his power? What is the alternative? Perhaps you have been told that the only alternative to anti-white racism is pro-white racism. Perhaps you have been told that the only alternative to socialist totalitarianism is fascist totalitarianism. Perhaps you have been told that the only alternative to runaway inflation is total market collapse. Perhaps you have been told that an equal society is not free, and a free society is not equal. If so, you have been told stuff and nonsense. The other option to this godless religion of the left is not to erect a godless religion of the right. The other option to globalism is not ethno-nationalism. The other option to the worship of unhindered political power is not the worship of an unhindered economic exploitation. Worshipping Mammon is no better than worshipping Moloch. We do not escape idol worship of worldly powers of iron or gold by erecting idols of our own. The way to throw down secular cults is not to start another secular cult, but to return to the Holy Mother Church. In these oratories I speak for the Last Crusade, but that crusade welcomes any man of goodwill who shares our loyalty to eternal truth. This crusade is called the last because it will last until the end of time, but it is the only fight really worth fighting. Nonetheless, any newly coined word, even if more clear, creates confusion. Coining new terms is an enemy trick, and we can afford to avoid it. For now, let us be content to call ourselves conservatives. This name will serve as a reminder that our aim is to preserve life, beauty, and civilization from the forces of decay and chaos, from the despotism of toleration, and from the culture of death. But if we use that name, a question remains, or rather a quip. Is it true conservatism is too weak for the struggle? Is it true that our ideals are outmoded, our time is past, our vigor is lost? Is it true that identity politics is the way of the future, here to stay, and that all men henceforth will be judged by skin color alone, or by the plumbing of genitalia, and no man will be judged by the qualities of his character? Is poverty, misery, mutual recrimination, and race hatred the country of tomorrow, into which one and all shall be exiled forever? Shall the future be nothing but the image of Justin Trudeau, with his childish pout and his girlish hair, stamping on a human face forever? Is it true that conservatism has never conserved anything? Well, to the contrary. Nothing in this world has ever been conserved except by men who upheld the eternal principles of liberty, the eternal prudence of the free market, or the eternal moral truths of the church. The political ideals of a limited government are as old as the day when Emperor Theodosius was barred from the cathedral by Bishop Ambrose, or when Emperor Henry IV was kneeling in the snows at Canossa, or when King Henry II submitted to a caning at Canterbury. The economic ideals, guaranteeing each man the right to the fruits of his own labor, were first explored in depth in English by Adam Smith, but this was based on theories dating back to medieval abbeys and on principles dating back to the laws of Moses. The social ideals, upholding women as being the helpmeet to her man, never to be demeaned by polygamy, concubinage, adultery, or harlotry, date back to the marriage of Eve to Adam. That she is her husband's equal in spiritual worth is the teaching of all ages, even if the moderns forget that brides are to submit to their bridegrooms even as the church submits to Christ. The experiment to grant her equality in political spheres, without endangering her particular and cherished uniqueness in the domestic and maternal spheres, so far has proved a failure. But outside of Christian lands, outside of Christian influence, no daughter of the Near East or Far East has any equality or any ennobling role, political or private, so this failure can hardly be laid at Christian feet. Everything of value in this world, everything that comes from the philosophy of Athens, the laws of Rome, and the faith of Jerusalem where Christ was crucified, everything of Western civilization, everything of Christendom that still endures, is, and has been, and ever will be conserved by the conservatives. For the conservatives are not merely one political party, nor one outlook. We are the soul of the West. The name conservatives does not promise that the tide will not rise, nor that thorns will not infest the ground. It promises that the tide may turn, and that we may yet reclaim our due. It promises that by struggle and travail, the thorns can be cut back and the ground cleared for planting. The name promises that our work is before us. Whether the work will be fruitful or fruitless, no good man is told before he puts his hand to the task. Have we never conserved anything? It is odd to be dismissed as impotent just as the moment when we conservatives, once again, are about to achieve a lasting victory. Conservatism is not about the past, for the past was not ideal. Likewise, progressivism is not about the future, for the future is not the screaming crematorium of hell. The parties are not composed of these elements, for the fight is not over these issues. The fight is now more clear than it has been in living memory. Dismiss all names and labels. The only division now is between traitors and patriots. Let us outfight and outlast these cultural Marxists using the same patience and principles we used on the Stalinist Marxists. Let us outthink the thought police and outfight the cultural fascists just as we did the Hitlerian fascists. Let us defeat the Dems in this generation as we did during the Civil Rights years and in the Civil War years. Let us rebel against the elitists in academia, in Silicon Valley, and in Hollywood, just as we rebelled against the British Crown. Patriots, the giant has slept for too long. Wake! The war horns sound. The Last Crusade is calling.